Hey guys, Dustin Wynn.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Paul Dini.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
You're listening to Bat Force Radio.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, and you're listening to Bat Force Radio, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Bat Force Radio. We've got a Grandpa Batman here. Hello, Grandpa
Let
Batman.
me take myself off mute. Try that again.
Okay. All right, yeah. From the top. Take two. Hey, this is usually how it goes. Anytime Tom is around, when Tom starts an episode, he's not here today. He's busy at San Diego. When Tom starts an episode, it's a good omen. When we flub the intro and have to start it again, things always go well.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome back to Bat Force Radio. We have a Grandpa Batman with us.
Howdy.
And I'm Robin Cross. And sometimes you read a new first issue and you get that feeling that this is going to be something special and you better not miss it. Much less often than that, you read that first issue and you get the feeling that absolutely no one should miss this one. When I read the first issue of a book called The Power Fantasy, I felt the latter. This issue just felt like Kieron Gillen and Caspar Wijngaard created a shift in how, quote, superhero stories are told, like a Watchmen level shift in what is expected from the genre. And lucky we are today to be joined with a co-creator of the Power Fantasy and illustrator of All Against All, Homesick Pilots, DC's Night Terrors, etc., Mr. Caspar Wijngaard. Hey, Caspar.
Thanks for having me.
How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, man. We always do this like greeting as if we haven't been talking for half an hour. So everyone's up to speed. You're kind of in a bit of a lull now where you get to take a break from the majority of the press stuff, but you've had a bit of a whirlwind going on for Power Fantasy prep here, yes?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's been nonstop for the last as of the last like 3 weeks. We've been, like banging the drum, like doing all the promo and talking to retailers and stores and reviewers and stuff. And it's that's always the thing with creator owned books, is always like it's exciting, but it's also like so nerve-wracking as well, because you're selling yourself, which is the thing, when you're doing like a DC book or a Marvel book, you kind of just do the pages and hand them in. I'm sure you've heard this lots of times before with guests that have come on the show, but it feels so personal doing a book like this. So when you're doing something and maybe something is received well or not received well, like you can only take it as like something that you're doing yourself, like it's like a reflection of how you're doing. But like everything's been like so positive and like amazing for this book, and I'm just really pumped that it's almost out. It's really exciting that the book's like I think it's like 2 weeks away from launching now. So like I'm just really excited for people to read it and see what we've been doing.
For our listeners, for our listeners, can you kind of give us the brief elevator pitch of the Power Fantasy and kind of some of the origins about where this story came from and how you and Kieron came up with Kieron. He's gonna kill me. Kieron.
That was a big setup for that joke, right?
Yeah. I made a book with a host Running Man.
How you guys developed the story and co-collaborated on it?
So like we did a book, I'd say about 5 years ago, called Peter Cannon Thunderbolt Dynamite. I don't know if any of you guys have read that. It was like a five issue miniseries, which kind of was it's really hard to explain if you haven't like read the thing, but it's almost like like a meta essay on the Watchmen almost, because Peter Cannon was the character. I think it was a Charlton character that Ozymandias was based off of originally. Before when Alan went to write the Watchmen, he wanted to use these original Charlton characters. I could be getting this wrong, but I don't think that was possible. So he basically adapted the characters into the characters that were in the Watchmen, and Ozymandias was Peter Cannon. Basically, he was at least he was the like the basis of that character. So like in our book, it was almost like he was kind of the alternate, an alternate reality version of. It's really hard to. It's such a bizarre book to explain. I'm not going to do it any justice, and the best thing you could do is go and read a book. And so we made this book. It was really well received. It's possibly one of the best received thing I've ever worked on, actually. And we've always been talking about doing another project together, at least in this vein, like a superhero book. And I was just coming off All Against All, and I was working on, I think I was doing an issue of Swan Songs.
Yes, which was so good, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, with Will Maxwell Prince, and like I want to collaborate with them for such a long time. So that was like so much fun to work on. And Kieron saw the pages that I was posting, and he was like, "Oh, hey, could you send me some of your artwork for this issue? I want to take a look." And my response was like, "Are we going to be doing a book together?" I was like, "Why do you want to see my pages?" Like he's like, I've known Kieron for years, so I knew he was kind of like, you're circling around the question. So I was kind of like, "Oh, I'm going to just straight out ask him," because like I knew after this issue I was only doing Night Terror. I was just doing the backups for Night Terrors, and then while I was doing Swan Songs, I was doing them simultaneously. And I was in the process of moving house, so I knew I couldn't really be taking a lot on at the time, because I was going to be like packing and moving, because we're moving across the country. So I was kind of like just doing like this one-off gig and doing the backups for Night Terror. So I had a lot of free time to kind of like jump between things. So I was like, I really need to set up the next project that I'm working on. And Kieron was, this wasn't known at the time, but as he was like, we're wrapping on X-Men around this time. It's going to be winding down. So you want to make a career in book together, and he pitched me the idea, and I was like, I don't even think he finished the pitch. I was like, I'm in straight away. Basically, whatever you want to do, I'm in. And it was the basic premise of what it is now, but it's obviously growing, because this was well over a year ago now. So the elevator pitch would be: there are 6 people on the planet that have the power of the nuclear arsenal of the United States of America. So basically 6 Dr. Manhattans, and their idea is, they have the power, they could end the world just like that if they wanted to. So the idea is they've got to coexist without fighting. They've got to have an understanding of one another, because the whole world relies on them getting along. Because if one of them loses their temper, that's it. Basically, that's the broad kind of pitch for it. But obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that. You have what are their relationships like with normal humans? Like, what are their relationships with other people with powers that aren't on the same level as them? Because they're not the only people with powers on the planet, but they're the ones that have the powers that can. They're basically like Storm or Thor. And against someone like Pyro, a lesser mutant, that could like cause a bit of fire and stuff like that, but there's nowhere near the same level of power. So it's interesting just seeing the way that they interact with these other. Kieron would explain this best, as he was writing X-Men, he was like, if I could take the reins off and really write Thor the way Thor would be written, or like a Storm, for instance, because he was writing X-Men, she could just end the world if she wanted to. Like, if she had a bad day, she could just obliterate. She could lift a planet off, a continent off the Earth, basically, or flood it, basically. So, again, it's a big scope. It's over 50 years, and you get to really know these characters and they've come to be that they are, and when you meet them in the first issue, in the up-to-date, like 1999 is our future, basically, in this book. Is our present day, sorry. So getting to know how they got there and how they move forward from the events of issue 1 is going to be really interesting. Which is really hard to explain without spoilers, but yeah, it's there's definitely a moment in issue 1 where you're like, okay, this is all going to hang on their relationships now and what they're going to move and do next. But there's someone that read the first issue, you would know that, like, right?
Yeah.
How would you?
Yeah.
How would you?
Yeah, big things happen, and yeah, that's one of the nuances that's interesting of this story is that it's not only a matter of that these people who have the ability to, you know, if they lose their temper, destroy the planet, so they have to not come into conflict with each other, but they also need to not come into conflict with, like, government powers of the world who might, you know, decide one day they want to show these individuals that they, as a government of a superpower country, you know, like one of, not the same superpower as the characters, mind you, like one of the important governments of the world, want to show that they're the ones in control. They could very easily tick off one of these superpowered beings and cause a problem. So they have to not only coexist with the other superpowered beings, but they have to not lose their shit on the little people who might try to flex some power over them.
Exactly, right. And you would think that a government that would know that these people exist, like their main idea would be like, we need to get rid of them, right? They would want to get rid of them. They would want, like, no one should have this much power. No one human should have the power. I mean, like, we're dealing with this in the world right now, but like, no one human should have the power to be able to wipe out a continent. So like, that's like the big idea with these characters is understanding them as humans and how they will interact and how they got to where they are. And that, you know, like, and Kieron's brilliant at writing really human, grounded characters as well. And like, it's been so exciting to be able to bring them to life and talk to him and work out like the ins and outs of these characters and what they believe. Like, each one has their own code almost, and their code of ethics, like with Lux, and like how they do things. You have like Valentina, who's just basically an angel, you know, like she just wants to do good. And then you've got other characters that just really don't want to be there, you know, like they really don't want to do it. And then you've got other characters that have no control over their power, and they're in a constant state of, you know, turmoil, trying not to lose control. So it's interesting, you know, and like, in the slightest thing can send them over. So it's going to be really cool to kind of to show that throughout the series and where they go. And, you know, with Kieron as well, there's going to be, you know, a lot of drama and emotion and terrible things happening to people, I imagine. Lots of terrible things are going to happen, yeah, and lots of fun things as well, and lots to be, you know, it's again, and like having known Kieron and having worked with him a lot in the past as well, he's given me a lot of opportunities to have a lot of fun with the art as well. And like, that's one thing I really love about doing stuff. And again, like, when he came into looking at me to do this book, he just read Swan songs, and I'd been experimenting a lot in Swan songs, doing different styles, because there was a lot of different eras and themes that we were working with in that issue. And that's a lot of what we're doing here as well. And that, you know, like, there's parts of that in issue 1, and as we go through, like, again, this is set over 50 years. So the idea of doing something set over 50 years and having that be visually interesting, where we weren't doing, you know, like, I've done comics before where I've said it in the past, and I thought, oh, hey, you know, like, I'll do this in the style of the golden era, you know, like a golden golden age comic, sorry. Or, you know, you do a 90s comics, you're like, oh, we're really leaning into kind of like the 90s image style. And I wanted to do something different this time. I wanted to try something that felt a bit more related to the characters and how they saw the world. So it was cool to kind of take every character and, you know, like, when you visit a character in an era of time relevant to them, and how they saw the world was like, that's how I'm going to draw it. Like that's how you're going to see it, basically.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was one of my questions that I had, because in reviewing some of your other work, you have a very, every artist has their own style, right? But you pick and choose your theme and your style based on the work. And that's one of the questions I had about how you pick, your art style and your visuals that you wanted to use for this title.
That was actually an odd learning curve as well, because like I never know going into a project how I'm going to draw it. So like when I went into All Against All, I knew that book couldn't look like Homesick Pilots. It wasn't the same type of book. Homesick Pilots was aimed at more of an older teenage adult, like young adult, but almost like mature audience. Mm-hmm. Where All Against All was like, like it was a totally mature audience. It's a really like high concept sci-fi book about. There he is. Oh yeah, and Spawn's in it.
Yeah, Spawn cover.
It's a very visceral book, and I knew going into that, like I had to kind of cut out the cutesy side of maybe what Homesick Pilots had, because like although Homesick Pilots can be like quite dark and gross, like there's also an element of it that's quite. I mean, like you can see there's something like quite inviting about the book. And I didn't really want that in All Against All. I wanted All Against All to feel horrible and unnatural and kind of gross and alien. So I used like a really sketchy style for that, like a really kind of like uneven, uncomfortable style, I think, going into it. So when I came into this book, I was like, well, I can't really do that. That's not going to work with this book. And there was, there's always that part, which I was mentioning before we got on the call. There's always a part of my brain that's thinking like, I'm not sure if Kieron's audience know me. I'm not sure if there's an overlap in readership. And having read all of Kieron's books and knowing the artists that Kieron's have worked with, I was like, I want to do something that like is definitely me, but may also like appeal to people that may have loved like Wictive or Die or Once and Future. So I have a style that I'm comfortable with, which was something in between what I was doing in Homesick Pilots and All Against All, and that's kind of what I did here, really. Where I've like, there's definitely like the rawness of like All Against All and some of the line work, but then there's also kind of like the inviting style of Homesick Pilots, which I've used as well, which is a little bit more universal, I think, and a bit more reader friendly, I think. I want everyone to be able to pick it up. I don't want to like alienate anyone by doing something that may.
I'm always curious when to talk to artists, because you guys see the world in a different way than just us readers and fans and people that appreciate the comic genre. And so, like with someone with a diverse range and style and output and all the work that you've done. So when you began this project, I'm just curious, do you have like some like notes that you say, okay, this is the style that I want to do, and to keep it uniform throughout the book? Because this book, and I'm sorry this question's long, but you're hopping through time, right? And you're showing the time periods in a little bit different way. This is what I've noticed. And that's cool, because it helps me as the reader understand, okay, now we're in this time. Yeah, you've got the dates in up there, but it kind of helps me as the reader to understand and see, okay, this is what he's doing for this time period. This is how he's showing this time period. Do you have like, or is this part of the editor that you work with saying, no, for this book and this page and this stuff, we need you to kind of focus your style more in this way? Or do you just have a free-for-all range that you can say, you know what, I'm going to just do whatever?
Oh no, this is totally me. Like this is totally what like my choice, really.
Okay.
I'll tell Kieron if I'm going to do something a specific way. I'll let him know beforehand, but he's always just like, he wants me to do something that I want to do, basically. He's not going to tell me otherwise. It's going to be like, I can't wait to see it, basically. I trust you, which is always like, that's what you want to hear. But even when I did like Night Terrors, when I was brought on to do the dream sequences on that, like Josh and Ben Abernathy, who was the editor on the book at the time, they were like, we want to see that like really dark stuff that you do. Like we want it to look different from, like the main line story. It has to look, this needs to look like a dream sequence, basically. And they will show me examples of my work, which which was like that, you know. And I was like, oh, you know, I can go darker than that, you know, like you know, I think it was like I just come off all again still, and that was super fun getting to do that stuff as well, just like go really like dark and try something different as well. So it's always really fun. But yeah, so like sometimes it's the editors have seen something that I've done before and they're like, can we see more of this? Or, you know, in this case, it's like, you know, like I like to like try different things a lot of the time, and then I think like with the power fantasy, I'm just using everything that I've learned over the years. Basically, I'm trying different things and just trying to find a way to fit it all in as well. Like there's a lot of like you know, I tried different things when I was doing the detective comic back puppets as well. Like I tried a different style there as well. I tried something a little different, and then even when I did the Catwoman with the Catwoman issue with Ram for his final issue as well, I tried something different there as well. You know, like it's always fun to like just try something new, because I think that makes the project more exciting as well. I kind of like, I always want to see how people react to different things as well. So it's always fun to see what lands and what I feel doesn't work on a page. And I feel like everything I'm putting into the power fantasy is the combination of like what I feel works for my work, basically.
Well, I really like seeing, you know, not just your color palette choices, but also some of the stylistic approaches you did with the different superpower characters, right? You know, I'm looking right now at, you know, Eliza and then Masumi. Mm-hmm. Two different characters, two different, you know, vibes, and also kind of a little different approach to the artwork. And I think that really helps me as a reader say, oh, okay, this is this character. I can identify this style with her, and then this style with her. Like, and then that's kind of cool to see how those blended in the same issue. That was cool.
Yeah, I mean, this was all the teething stage of the comic as well. You know, like I was, because before we went out to Emerald City Comic Con, you know, I was still working on the issue, but we wanted to show the characters. So I was doing the character pages before I'd even really got into the meat and bones of the issue. So it was kind of interesting to kind of like, that was something in the issue I was really looking forward to doing later on, like just building up to that. So to do that before and then have, you know, like, and then go back and draw the rest of the issue after I came back from ECC was interesting, you know, because I was seeing it differently as well. But like, I love the way that the characters look in those intro pages. So it was almost like a happy accident to get to do that beforehand. And like you said, like that's reaffirming to hear you say that, because that helps me, you know, that's something that I'd want to hear, you know, like it helps to, you know, like show that the characters are different as well, and it sets them apart from the rest of the world. So that's really cool to hear.
And when you travel to places, I mean, are you constantly like in research observation mode? You know, like example, you know, the first page, we start off in New York City in 1966. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, that really does look like New York. And you even had them fold the pizza. I was pretty impressed with that.
Yeah, that was the pizza folding bit was the hardest bit of that whole entire scene, actually. Getting pizzas to look normal and someone's like but it's always weird little things that you don't think about when you're drawing a comic book, when you're doing it, you're like, you know, like, why is that the trickiest thing? Like, why is there's always those weird little things when you think about things in motion as well. Like you often see things in motion and they look natural, but when you're trying to get something in a freeze frame, especially in comics, and make it look natural, that's always the trickiest thing. So you know, because people look goofy. You ever seen those photographs of people like diving, you know, and like doing backflips off a board?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Like, it's never gonna look right. So like, and people, when they run and you take a photograph of them, they always look like someone's punched them in the side of their gut. So it's always trying to get the right look of things. And like, yeah, the pizzas in the hands thing was a weird natural thing. People look really funny when they're like holding a slice of pizza or anything like that, especially leaning against the side of the wall. So that was more complicated than like trying to work out what, you know, like New York in the Village looked like in 1960s. That was the easy part. But like, it's always fun. Like, all of that stuff's really fun. I love that's the joy of the job, you know. It's like it's like a massive puzzle to me. Like, working out how all those pieces fit together is always like, you know, like that's why I love this job. That's why I love doing it. Is trying to make everything fit. You know, like trying to make everything work. And you know, like Dan will say this as well. Like Dan Waters and Kieron is like, they'll send me a page with like 5 panels, and then I'll send them back like a 9-panel page, because like I'll want to like fit in little bits in between just to kind of like make that page make more sense to me, and like add little tiny extra moments in between to kind of world build and stuff. Because you know, I do really genuinely enjoy making comics. You know, it's something I love to do. I love storytelling, so it's like, and to have free reign again, like this is why I've done more creator-owned books than I have maybe like IP books as well, because it's more there, you know, there's the opportunities to do stuff like this. And that's not to say you can't do that on, say, like a DC book, but you know, like you have to let everyone know beforehand, and they have to approve it before you get to add extra panels and stuff. You know, like there's more of a process for, oh hey, I'm gonna do this. You know, that's why you send in all your roughs and your layouts first and your notes, and make sure that everyone's on board with the changes.
Oh really? They have to approve the number of panels per page sometimes?
No. But I just like, if I was going to change something, if I wanted to add like an extra page, if I wanted to add like beats, like extra panels or something like that, I wouldn't just do that, because then that would throw everyone off if they were going to do a letter pass.
Understood. Okay.
I mean, like I would do that on an image book as well, but it's something that it's easier to get on like a WhatsApp call with like Kieron and be like, hey, I'm just going to do this on this issue than to go through the editorial process on like
right. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, you know, it's just, I don't worry about it as much, so I don't feel like I can do it as much. But in a creator-owned book, I always feel like it's the co-authorship of making a book is so fluid that, you know, like when you've got the script is, Kieron will send me the script, but it's almost like, you know, it's a very solid guideline, but it's like he's given me enough information to say like, hey, these are the panels that I want you to work with, like have fun basically. And that's like such a cool thing. And that's the same with working with Dan and a lot of the writers I've worked with in creator-owned books. It's always like, you know, it's definitely it's a collaboration really. It really feels like a collaboration more than like a very approved script that you've been given that's gone through a lot of like editorial and rewrites. And you definitely feel like you don't want to change stuff too much after everyone's gone. You know, like everyone's got to a bit where they're happy, and then I'm not going to come in at the last minute and be like, oh, I'm gonna, hey, what if I draw this thing?
When we speak to someone for the first time, we like to get into their origin story in comics. So like you've recently shared on your Instagram some photos of old belongings that you've been going through, I think at your parents' home. And we could see from there that comics go back to your childhood.
Right.
What was the starting point? Like, was there a specific thing, a comic or an artist or anything that led you to the path to comics, to becoming a comic illustrator?
I think the stuff I shared from the book there was a lot of Akira Toriyama in that. Again, like I mentioned earlier about we were just playing the Sandland game. Which is the last project that he worked on. So like I've always been a fan of his work, and you know, it's terrible that he's gone. But Dragon Ball was definitely something that I picked up really early. And I couldn't read it, you know, like I was my dad would pick up the manga for me in Japanese basically, and I would just flick through the pages and copy the artwork. And before that, I was huge, you know, like everyone my age was huge on the Ninja Turtles. So my dad had bought me the original, I think volume 1 and 2 of the Mirage run, the original Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird run. And I remember I must have been about 6 or 7 at the time. So like when I was reading it, I was like, Jesus Christ, this shit's me. I obviously didn't say that, but you know, this stuff's like super violent. So I was like really like, oh, this stuff's really cool. So again, that was like a whole, like in my mind, you know, like growing up in the UK, the only real comics you had was this book called The Beano, which was like in the Dandy, which were like Dennis the Menace and like this cowboy that punched cows or something. It was really weird. It was like I think he punched a cow so hard it turned into a beef pie. You know, like it was just like really weird stuff. I never read it, but it was like very like kiddie. It was like kid stuff. And you know, and getting hold of like Marvel comics was relatively sparse as well. And my dad moved to the States when I was 5. So when I used to visit him, his then wife, my stepmother, her brother had like a huge like a huge like stack, like I'm not even talking about a stack, like almost like a cupboard full of comics, you know, like old 1960s 1970s Marvel comics, you know, like everything, and like all the original Fantastic Four, like all of like Spider-Man, like Planet of the Apes, like just, and you name it, it was in there, you know. And we'd be staying with my dad for like these summer holidays. We would be with him for like weeks, so we just read these comics, you know, like we just get them out of the comics, you know, these like really valuable comics, probably worth a lot of money, you know, and just like, and read them all, you know. We read all these comics, and I just adored them. I thought they were the best things I'd ever read, you know. And these were like the original stuff, you know. These were like the original X-Men comics, the original Fantastic Four comics, and I was just, you know, 9 years old, eight or 9, and just like, this is the coolest stuff. Yeah, and I just got with it from there. Really, just never stopped.
It's fun hearing how different people around the world ended up, you know, just the different roads that they found American comics ending up in their hands.
Yeah.
I heard Neil Gaiman tell a story of there was just this box of American comics that was in his house when he was a kid, and that was what led him to, even when he was still in school, deciding that what he wanted to do when he grew up was make American comics. And he never knew where that box of comics came from.
That's crazy.
And really late in life, he's talking to, like, his father was really unwell, and you know, I think it was like sort of on his deathbed kind of time, and Neil was just talking with him about the direction of his life, and you know, this box of American comics that changed the direction. He said, and I still never knew where that box of comics came from. And Neil said, so I told my dad that, and my dad said, you know, I know where those comics came from, and I'll tell you. And then he died. So then he just never to find out.
That's so crazy. Wow.
And that's Neil Gaiman.
He's like, oh, you stole my comics.
It is weird. Like, it's like, again, like it's not anything I thought I'd be doing, you know. Like, again, like, even I keep telling myself that comics wasn't something I wanted to end up doing. I don't know why and I don't know why I tell myself that, because if I look back through everything that I've done and all of my books and everything, and I found like a 200-page comic I wrote when I was like 14. I'm like, why did I ever not think that this is what I wanted to do when I was older? I guess that was part of my brain that was like, oh, you know, I want to work in video games, or I want to work in the film, you know, like this industry or that industry. And it was like, of course I was going to end up working in comics. Like, this is what I've always wanted to do. Like, this is basically what I've been telling myself since I was a child, you know. This is where I'd be happiest, and it is, you know, like I said earlier, it's like I genuinely love this job. I love drawing comics, and I love storytelling. It's like therapy almost. It's like a puzzle to solve. It's like always really fun getting a script and like trying to work out how to make that work on a page. That's always like the fun thing to do. And then like seeing it work, and then getting the book out, and then seeing people tell you that like this was like a really cool thing is like, it's like the best feeling, really. You know, you can't really beat that with like when you're an artist. It's you know, it's a really cool feeling to be able to like tell a story visually.
So once that decision was made, once you knew that was what you wanted to do, what did that path look like? Was it art school, or what was your road?
Yeah, it's interesting because like I went to university to do illustration, and all of my teachers there told me not to do American comics. You know, I told them this is what, you know, like I want to get into comics, I want to do comics. And they basically told me there's not a chance in hell that you're going to make comics in America. They said that there's only a few people in the UK that do it. You're not one of them, basically. it was genuinely like that. They were like, like, you may as well give up. It's like a pipe dream. You have no idea like the type of work. And it's weird, like it's always weird to think about that, because they're coming at it from a place where it's like, this is pre-internet, and of course it was harder for people to get work in the States when you're in the UK, because you were limited then. Like being able to contact people, for one, was harder, and there wasn't conventions in the UK. And the first convention I ever attended was one in the UK called Kapow, which I think Mark Miller put together, which would have been in like 2000 and God, when was that? When did Saga come out? I remember it was when Saga came out, because issue 3 of Saga, I just picked up issue 3 of Saga at that convention. Or some friends had picked up issue 3 of Saga for me. So it was that year anyway. That was the first convention I ever went to.
So that was 2012 was when it started.
2012, right? Okay, that's wow. Okay, crazy. And I got my first image book in 2014. So like those 2 years were basically doing conventions and trying to meet editors, because they were coming over to the UK. I didn't know this. I didn't know that Marvel would come over and DC would come over and Image would come over to conventions in the UK and do portfolio reviews. So that's how I found out. I went with my portfolio and I submitted it and met CB Cebulski like that second day. Like I got a call back to meet with him, and I was like, oh Jesus Christ, like I'm meeting a Marvel editor. And he looked at my work and he was like, oh, this is really cool, you want to do some samples? So at that point I was like, oh my God, I'm working at Marvel. I didn't know how many people had done samples for Marvel at this point. So I went back and he emailed me the script, and I was like, this is it, this is it. I'm going to be working for Marvel. And I spent ages on the pages, spent a really long time, sent it in. He emailed me back and he was like, this looks great. And then that was it, like absolute radio silence. And I was like, I guess I'm not working at Marvel. But like, I think that kind of gave me it definitely gave me the confidence, I think, to know there was a possibility that I might be able to do it. Like maybe not this time, but like if I keep trying on my portfolio and I keep doing sequentials and working, like doing stuff in indie comics, putting stuff together and showing it to editors, then eventually, like I might get the call back. So that's basically what I did. I kept going to conventions. I met with like Vertigo, I met with DC. And again, it was a lot of the same things, like, send me your portfolio again, and I'll send it around the editors. And it was always the same thing. It was like never getting a call back. And then I met with Image. I met with Eric Stevenson at Image Comics, and he basically said, like, have you ever thought about doing your own series? Like, your stuff's really cool. Have you ever thought about doing a book? And it hadn't really occurred to me at the time. I was like, like I had ideas and stuff, and I was working with Dan Waters at the time, and we used, neither of us were working in comics, like we were working, like we didn't really know what we were doing. We wanted to make comics. We wanted to make American comics. So we came up with Limbo. We came up with the pitch for Limbo, and we took it to Thought Bubble Festival the following year and pitched it to Image, and they picked it up basically. Like they emailed us back a week later, and they were like, we want to put this book out at Image, basically. That was it basically from that point on. And then I started getting callbacks from Marvel and DC.
Of course.
But yeah, like that book meant a lot. That book was basically like our calling card for a long time. Like it didn't do particularly very well. Like it came out and it did okay. Like we saw a bit of money, but it was, like I'm so proud of that book anyway. And it's basically like, it was this. It was our business card. For the longest time, it was like we had a book out. We had a trade. We had something to show people, to show that we could make a comic book, basically. And then Dan did Coffin Bound, which was like amazing, like straight after that, and then I did Angelic with Suspiria, and then like we came back and did Homesick Pilots, and now Dan's doing like Nightwing. Do you know what I mean? Like, like he's like one of my closest friends, and like just to see him like you know, like we've always come up at the same point and we're always doing things at the same time, but just to see like what he's working on all the time, like parallel to what I'm doing, is always really fucking cool.
Since you mentioned that, I just want to point out, every time someone's run on a book is ending, like, you know, Tom Taylor's run on Nightwing coming to an end, you know, him and Bruno Redondo, that run has been so great. Every time a run like that is coming to, you know, it's coming to an end, you have a little trepidation of, oh, who's going to end up on it now? Am I going to enjoy it? Am I going to enjoy it as much? When they announced Dan, I thought, oh, great. I can get behind that. I'm still going to like this book.
Yeah. I mean, I was with Dan a couple of weeks ago. We were out drinking, and I was just giving him so much shit. You know, like, I was just like, I was like, you're gonna die. Really winding him up, and he was just like, I'll be fine. I was just like, I'm really taking this movie, man. People love you, man. Like, your stuff's like, everything that he's done at DC is like, you smashed it out of the park. You know, he's such a good storyteller. And like, I wouldn't have done anything that I would have done with Dan if I didn't think he was like one of the best writers. So like, you know, everything that I've worked on with him, like, you know, Nightwing's going to be great. Well, you know, he was telling me about it before. You know, this was like before. I think this is before it was 100%. You know, like where he was still pitching his ideas to DC, and I was just like, "You're going to smash it, man. This is going to be great. It's going to be a really cool run." So it's like, it's cool that it's out there now, and people are going to love it. It's really, really, really good.
And with him having just wrapped Six Fingers at Image, that's you know, that may have brought some more eyes to him of people who didn't already know his work. You know, his Six Fingers. For anyone that doesn't know what Six Fingers was, it was this really cool thing at Image. So simultaneously, Ram was doing a book called The One Hand about this detective chasing a copycat serial killer who was copying, you know, a killer he had put away years before. And at the same time that book was coming out, Dan was doing this book called The Six Fingers about this serial killer who is evading this detective who's chasing him. So I like to explain it to customers as, you know, the movie Seven, the, you know, Morgan Freeman, Brad Pitt one. Let's say at the same time that the movie Seven came out, there was a movie coming out with Kevin Spacey where he was going around doing all these killings using the Seven Deadly Sins motif. And so you would get to see the two sides of it, and that's really what those two comics were. And now, Dan's going to Nightwing. Yeah,
it's a great book. Yeah, and he did Loki as well recently as well, which is really stellar.
And obviously, Homesick Pilots, which I point so many people to that book, and I'm still holding out hope that eventually we get like a nice thick hardcover single volume of Homesick.
Yeah, everyone asks for a hardcover. I mean, like that book like does so well for me and Dan anyway. Like it's like we kind of like where it is at the moment. Like doing a hardcover costs a lot. So like,
I know.
There's also a part of us like, are we ready to kind of like, you know, like cut the legs off this cash cow for a bit?
Do you ever go back to those art teachers and say, like, remember when you told me, you know, not to do this?
I'd like to. They would remember who I was there, you know, probably a blip for them, but like, I remember them, but you know, and it's like, it's that kind of.
Well, I'm
I don't know if it's tough love or weird encouragement that they were trying to give me, but if it was, it worked. Do you know what I mean? Like, because that kind of like telling me that I couldn't do something definitely made me want to do it, just to kind of prove them wrong. And you know, you never know. Like, I don't think it would have been like that. I don't think that.
Well, I mean,
psychology was really on their like table of like. I think they genuinely told me not to waste my time with this stuff. And
it's very surprising to me that they would discourage you from that. When I mean, there have been other great and significant artists and storytellers from the UK. You know, for example, I mean, we're talking Dave Gibbons.
I mean, it could have been
David Lloyd, you know, I mean, iconic guys.
I drank a lot at university and I was quite lazy. You know, it could have been that they just thought like they may have known that it was going to be like a hard job, and it might have, and you know, and it's fair to say because like I know myself, and I finished university and I moved to London to become a comic artist, and it wasn't until my girlfriend got pregnant with my first daughter that I was like, shit, like I've got one chance to do this now, like, and this was like after I've met with Image for the first time, and I was kind of like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to pack this pipe dream in, I'm gonna have to get like a 9-to-5 job now. I was working freelance as an illustrator anyway, but I was like, this isn't gonna pay the bills. I really need to, I'm gonna have to pack this in basically. So like knowing that I was going to be a father really gave me that motivation. So like they may have seen something in me that I didn't see at the time when I was at university. They're like, this guy just doesn't have the motivation to do like a full comic maybe, or he won't. Maybe that's what it was. But like definitely like becoming a parent was like the thing that basically was like, if I want to do this for a job full time, I really need to put 100% into this, which, like I felt like I did when we did Limbo. It was definitely like one of those like make or break moments. When we got the email back to say that the book was coming out, I was like, oh shit, like this could work. Like I could do this for a job.
Yeah, pressure makes diamonds.
Yeah,
so there
definitely.
you
go. So yeah, like they could have been right, but I don't want to like go back. I don't think it would. It would be cool to go back and tell someone that told me that I couldn't do a job that I couldn't do it, but I just don't think it would land the way it would in my head. They're like, sorry, who are you?
Right.
So how did you first link up with Kieron?
God, it's like we were all living in London, so there was a comic social that we used to like. Kieron, well, I wouldn't say Kieron hosted it, but like Kieron was there a lot, and there was lots of other UK creators in the comic scene that would go to this bar, like once a month basically, and we'd just get together, and me and my friends would just go anyway because we knew that there was like big writers there, basically, big creators. And I think when there was definitely times when we used to go and we used to hang out and we used to like just chat and talk about comics at the bar. And I think after Limbo came out, there was suddenly a change in people just being like coming over to us and being like, oh, hey, you're the guys that made that book. That was really cool, So it could have come from that, or just having like everything kind of changed when Limbo came out anyway. Like we just, I think our confidence kind of changed a lot after that book came out. We felt like we could talk to people because it felt legit, almost like legitimized us that we had like an American, like an Image book out that we could talk to creators. And we wouldn't feel like we were kind of just like following them around and being like, oh, hey, like I didn't want to come across as someone that was like pestering a creator. I wouldn't want to like get on the wrong, as much as like, God, it's weird to think about things that you used to do when you were like climbing up that ladder to get into comics. But like, talking to people in the industry is like one of the hardest things to do anyway. And for me anyway, I'm quite an introverted person, so like to go out and like talk to people at conventions and like introduce myself and share my work has always been something I've not like had a lot of confidence in doing, and I've seen other people do it like really successful, like Ram. Like Ram can talk to anyone. Like going to a convention with Ram before Ram was Ram, and just see him talk to like absolutely everyone and carry a conversation and everyone be 100% interested in what he had to say. I don't know how he did it,
Well, he's he's taller than everyone, so he gets to look down at everyone while he's talking. So,
it's weird. Like I think about when I first met Ram, like he had like really short hair, so it's like it was a totally different guy almost. But yeah, his confidence was like through the roof, and like compared to me, I just don't know how he does it. Like he just talked to everyone. And everyone wanted to hear what he had to say. And I was just like, he could carry a whole room. So I was just like, oh man, this guy's going to, like, he's going to have no problems. So like, I was like, I just have to sell myself on my art. I just have to just do really good work basically and do it that way. Because I just can't talk to people in the same way that I know a lot of people can.
You should have, it's kind of like that movie Love Actually. You just probably should have just moved to Wisconsin and gone to this bar with a bunch of these dumb Americans and talk with your British accent, and then people just swoon over you.
Oh yeah, it's always really easy when I come to whenever I do a convention in the States. Is wait, I should just get a really big hat or something, just something that like makes me stand out in a room. Go to like one of these AfterCon parties, just like he's the guy with the top hat.
There you go.
I mean, like, I'm not the brightest guy, but yeah, like everyone seems to think when I come to the States because I've got a British accent, I'm some sort of like.
Oh yeah, dude. It's like a
well-to-do dude that knows everything.
It's kind of like a superpower, like in the book.
Yeah, I could. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if like with the character of Lux is weird because like he's French, so like I read him with a French accent, and I wonder how people reading the first issue are gonna like read him as well.
Yeah.
So it's like it's always interesting to know like that's always the fun part of comics as well. It's like trying to get those voices right in the character. But I think you will. Yeah, everyone's got. I mean, again, that's the whole thing about reading, right? It's like you get to do some of the work yourself, which is really cool. You're also an author in the book, almost.
That just made me consider this for the first time. Speaking of the voice that you can read the character with, just from issue 1, this seems like a very adaptable comic. This seems like something that could definitely, become either an animated adaptation or a live action kind of thing. It's that kind of thing. It has that great sort of cast of characters that are all nuanced and different from each other, and that's actually something that I wanted to ask you about too. What is the process for creating such a cast of specifically distinctive looking characters? Like, I'm not particularly intelligent, and it typically takes me until around issue 38 of a book to start remembering which names go with which characters. But right in the first issue of Power Fantasy, you introduce us to around a dozen new characters, and I had no problem immediately knowing who was who. You made it easy with characters having distinct appearances, out of the ordinary hair colors and clothing styles, facial hair, etc. What's the process for creating a large cast of characters, and like, are you just subconsciously making them look different, or are you purposely trying to make them look distinctive to help, like, guys like me that won't remember who's who?
It's weird, like I want to say that like I knew what I was doing before I went into it to make me sound like I was like really prepared, but like you never really know. Like I always take the basic things in when I make a book. And I remember years ago someone explaining how they colored like the Hulk and Cap and Spider-Man, like with these color codes, and then they'd show you like a range of colors and you'd be able to tell which character it was in pop culture. Like if someone was to show you like black, red, flesh, white, flesh, you'd be like, oh, that's Ryu from Street Fighter. Do you know what I mean? Like there was like those weird things where it's just like you could tell a character just by like by the colors that they had. And like when I was doing like Homesick Pilots, I remember like the thing that I like to do with those characters is like I felt that the world was more important than the characters were really important because they were telling the story. But I was like, I'm going to make them one color. Like their entire body is going to be purple, with like different variations of that color. And every character is going to have their own color theme. But the world that they were in was going to be like the character, the big character. And they were going to tell the story within it. Dan would do that part of the job. He's the one that's giving them the voice and he's the one that's doing that. And this is my job. Where in this one, it's all, like the whole thing here is like you've got these 6 individuals that are really important, but at the same time, we both didn't want to make a cape book. We didn't want to make a book where everyone's like in capes or, spandex or anything like that. We definitely wanted to make these people human, basically humans with ridiculous power. So it's tricky, like Eliza is definitely the character that was more of something that I would draw if I was like, draw a cool character from something that you like, like a JRPG or something. That's where Eliza came from. Mizumi is like Bjork, basically. Like we find these like pop culture characters that we see and we really like, and we're going to draw inspiration from that. And like Lux is just like a really fucking cool guy. He's just really cool, and like ahead of a time, you know, like, I mean, even though it's 1999, he doesn't look like he's from 1999, and that was definitely a thing, because I remember saying to Kieron, was like, oh, this book's set in 1999, and I was like, ah, yes, when fashion was at its peak, you know, like, it's like, how do we make this dude look cool in 1999? You know, is he gonna have like frosted tips and like fucking, you know, it's like he's just like stepped out of a Backstreet Boys video, you know, like a silver shell suit or something. I was like, we can't do that. It's got to be like, he's got to look really cool. So that, you know, but this is an alternate future as well. So like we have the fun of that as well. Like it's definitely like, there's definitely things in the world that like Kieron was always like, you know, like always sprinkle little things that lets everyone know that this is definitely an alternate history. You know, like things have happened differently throughout these 50 years. We don't know them yet, and the reader doesn't know this yet, but you know, like put these little things in there, you know, like, so when people go back and read the first issue, they're like, ah, yeah, like I wouldn't have noticed that before, you know, and that's always really fun to do stuff like that. And like, and I'll be doing that right up until, you know, like I went back to issue 1 after doing issue 2 and added stuff, you know, where I was like, oh, this is a cool thing. I want to add that kind of, you know, lens to issue 2. And again, I did that with Homesick Pilots. I've done that with All Against All. There's always, you know, like, especially when you're so far ahead on the pages before an issue comes out, to have the choice, you know, like have the ability to go back and change stuff, like, and make it feel a bit more like cohesive is great. It's a great freedom to have. And with the characters as well, you know, like the characters have changed so much from the very first time I've drawn them to where they are in issue 3, you know, like, and I always have to like look back at what I've drawn in issue 1 to make sure that they kind of stay the same. But if I went back and looked at like Homesick Pilots and then looked at the last issue of Homesick Pilots, the characters are going to have changed so much between issue 1 and the final issue, because you grow into those characters so much. You know, they you know them basically, you know, they're like people by the end of the series. So like to get there, to get to that point, like I still 100, you know, I still don't think the characters are 100% down. Like I love the way that they look in issue 1. I think they look fantastic, and I'm really happy with how they've come together. But I can't wait to see what they look like in like issue 15. Do you know what I mean? Like something like that. Like see where issue 16, 17, like what they're gonna look like then. You know, like what transformations they've been through from issue 1 to issue 2, and like and how they look and how I know them as characters as well. It's going to be really exciting to see. You know, and that's always fun as well, like mixing stuff up and changing stuff. Like I like doing that in Homesick Pilots. You know, I didn't want to keep them in the same clothes, so I just gave them different haircuts, different outfits, and scars and stuff. And I think when I did Heavy originally, like even with the Heavy design, you know, I drew him throughout. I didn't even know what the plot was going to be, you know, but I just drew him throughout the ages. And I think on one of them, I just drew him without an arm, you know, like with this like big wound in his chest. Yeah. You know, and he didn't have hair, and Kieron was, oh, you know, like I saw him as this kind of like this dude character, you know, like the dude from The Big Lebowski, and I was like, oh yeah, I can kind of see that actually, yeah, I can see that. Like, and he's got like a robe on, and I was like, yeah, maybe not the robe, maybe he's got like this kind of like this boxing, like, you know, it's like in between, because you know he's kind of a hard man. He's kind of like he's kind of like the dude, but he's also like. He'll mess you up, you know, if you wanted to, you know, like, and he's got his spoken stuff. He's like a chill kind of guy, and then like we've got Majors there in the middle, you know, and he's British, and again it's the 90s, so like I've got him in this kind of early 90s kind of rave gear. You know, I went back and watched like Alien 3, you know, like I wanted him to like he just stepped out of like Fury 313, you know. Yeah, I was like, you know, that kind of era of the 90s where it was just like big baggy clothes and ripped, and then you know, definitely just weird little bits of inspiration from different places. But yeah, I'm glad it lands. I'm glad that they all feel individual, because that's always like a worry going in, that you can take them apart. So like the colors are always important. Like choosing colors are always important, and choosing those little tiny things that show that they're human, but just make them slightly different. Again, like Heavy and his floating spliff and his in his like sandals or something like that. Just something slightly off that makes them a character.
Hey Gramps, you want to jump into a lightning round before we
oh sure
all day here?
Sure. So what we do is we just ask some random questions just to get to know you a little bit better.
Mhm.
Actually, it's more kind of like a psychology test. This,
Oh, no.
you better answer carefully, because this tells you a lot about who you are as a person. No, I'm just kidding. We just like to have a little fun and get to know you a little better, just so our readers,
Readers? Am I supposed to read this?
Readers, listeners. Man, I tell you what, I'm so off today. I'm so out of practice on doing these podcasts.
I feel like in Blade Runner with this light as well. I feel like you're about to do the replicant test on me. Like
exactly. So first, where do you live?
I live in Shropshire. I actually live, Christian Ward.
Yep. Yeah. We've had Christian on.
Yeah, I live like a 5-minute walk from Christian, actually, which is kind of we went to go and see Deadpool and Wolverine like yesterday.
Oh, cool.
Was that the day before? I cannot remember. I forget now. In Shrewsbury in Shropshire, which is also home to Charlie Uplad from The Walking Dead.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Pretty cool area.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and Christian's got Spectrograph going on right now with James. That's doing very well too. That's a very cool book.
All right, and as a citizen of the UK, this is very important. This tells me a lot about you. Oasis or Blur?
Neither. Blur, probably, if I had to choose.
Okay. All right. So what is your preferred style of music?
That's a tricky question. I grew up listening to metal, so
metal.
I mean, you can tell that from the books I worked on. But I listen to a lot of stuff now. I listen to a lot of movie soundtracks at the moment. Actually, I think they're just easier to work to. It's like it's weird. Like when I worked on Homesick Pilots, I listened to a lot of hip hop because it was like easier. Like I always listen to hip hop when I work a lot of the time because there's like the rhythm to working to hip hop is like it's kind of perfect, or just anything that's like a steady beat, basically something where you can just kind of bop your head to it and like just draw. So like, but if I'm listening to metal, I'll find myself just like, it's like, like I'm there with my pen. I'm not, I'm drawing and then I'll lose myself for a minute,
Yeah.
You get too into it. It's really hard to kind of draw and listen to metal at the same time. You really have to be on a grind to kind of like, to not let like a drum solo send you off or something. But like, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've been listening to weirdly a lot of I don't know what I've been listening to. I haven't been listening to a lot of music actually when I've been working on the Power Fantasy. It's kind of I've just been watching shows, really, like just had like shows on in the background. But that's not the best answer for a very
okay
hard question.
It's okay. You mentioned that you and your son like to play video games together. What are some of your favorite games?
Oh, like all time or recently?
All time. Metroid.
Yeah, Metroid definitely. Super Metroid is the GOAT. Final Fantasy VI will always be precious to me. Chrono Trigger. I mean, I'm just doing all of the obvious ones from that era.
Yeah.
Like more recently, what did I play? There's going to be a ton of games that I played recently that I just thought were just like incredible, and I can't think of them right now. I mean, it always changes because like the hard thing with any game is when you go and revisit it, it's like it's never that same feeling. So I go on like the games that I played for the first time, and I just like could not put them down. So like Fallout 3 was one of those games for me. Like I always that game, like there's games that I would love to play a game for the first time and not be able to.
Yeah.
Dark Souls, I love anything from FromSoft. Elden Ring is just incredible. I play a lot of JRPGs. But yeah, like best game of all time. God, It's really that's I don't know. I like RPGs. I'm like replaying The Witcher 3 at the moment.
Okay.
That's kind of what I'm in the middle of right now. I never did the DLC. My daughter was born when The Witcher came out, when Witcher 3 came out. So, and I didn't have a PS4 at the time, so I had to borrow it off my brother when he went to live in Berlin. So he gave me his PS4 while he was in Berlin, and I basically like went out the day. The deal was if I went out and bought Witcher 3, he could have my copy of it when he got back when the PlayStation came back. Basically.
Right.
So, but yeah, like my daughter was like 6 months old, and I was like rushing through that game, and all the time that like any moment I got to play it, I was trying to play it. So I wasn't really putting a lot of time into it. It was kind of a blur.
So like, on some of those games, do you take reference from like some of the visuals and the graphics and the artwork to kind of say, you know what, this is kind of how I'd like to put it into my books? Yeah.
I mean, one of the coolest things I've got to was actually do a Dark Souls comics with Dan Waters. We did 2 together. And that was like, I got Dan into Dark Souls when Dark Souls 2 came out. And I was like, I played Demon Souls and then Dark Souls. And when Dark Souls 2 came out, again, this was around the time when my daughter was born. I think I played Dark Souls 2 like in like a fortnight before my daughter was born,
Okay.
So like, it was like my wife was heavily pregnant. That was my girlfriend at the time. So she was heavily pregnant. I was like just working freelance, so I wasn't really doing a lot at the time anyway. So we were just getting ready to have a baby, and I was just like sat in the living room, just like playing, like trying to beat Dark Souls 2 as fast as I possibly could, before I could never play a video game again, or at least that's what I thought. But like, I was like, I never know when I'm going to get a chance to play a game again. So
yeah, exactly.
I gave it to Dan. I lent my copy of Dark Souls 2 to Dan. I was like, you need to play this. And
so when you go to your pub on karaoke night, what's your go-to karaoke song?
God, we haven't done one. I haven't done karaoke. I did karaoke. I remember we did it in New York a few years ago. Again with Kieron Gillen and a couple of other creators, Aloing and stuff. And I think me, Dan, and Ryan O'Sullivan. Do you know Ryan O'Sullivan? He did like Fearscape and stuff like that. At Vault. We did Don't Sleep Till Brooklyn by the Beastie Boys.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
I don't think it got the reaction we thought it was going to get. We all took it in turns to do the rap. It was hilarious. But like, I think there was like 20 people in the room just staring at us like, don't invite the Brits to karaoke again.
Oh man.
Sorry, but I think I did like some Weezer as well, like the Sweater song, like later on in the night when everyone was really tired. And I think someone came up to me and they're like, Caspar, you've got to read the room. Like, we need upbeat tracks right now. Don't put people to sleep. Yeah, I don't get karaoke.
Okay, that's funny.
They were doing it in Seattle as well. Like everyone was like so hype as well. Everyone did some karaoke. I got invited out, and I was just watching everyone, and I was like, I'm so jet lagged. I can't meet this enthusiasm right now. I had to leave. I was like, everyone's like having the time of their life, and I'm just sat at the back of the room, like I just need to go to sleep. So yeah, but yeah, probably something like that. It's always tricky. Maybe some Limp Bizkit, that could be funny.
Oh yeah, that'd be funny.
Okay. Something along those lines. I can't take that stuff too seriously. It would have to just be like a joke song. I'm actually going to see Korn in 2 weeks, which is going to be really weird because they never play over here. And like, I had no interest in ever seeing Korn like in years. I haven't listened to Korn in years, but like some of my friends were like, "Yeah, Korn are playing in London." Like,
why not? Let's go.
And we were just like, okay, like,
yeah.
These guys are real old, and then we're going to get a chance to see them again. So that'll be fun, I think. Because I feel old, and that's how they feel. Still doing it. This is what it must have been like. That's why I was thinking, like, it must have been like when when I was a kid and people were like going to see like the Rolling Stones and stuff, and I'd be like, why do people want to go and see these old guys? Like,
I actually just saw them.
Literally.
Yeah, I did. I was just blown away. I was like, these guys can still play and put on
Yeah.
a 3-hour concert. It's a
Yeah, that's what they
miracle.
are.
It's a
That's like-
miracle. I just don't know how they do it. But-
they've evolved. Their skin has evolved into that lifestyle. They kind of just like musical bones that like.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, it's funny seeing how some people have the longevity and have lasted for decades and others haven't. Like you look at how Axl Rose sounds now, or how Vince Neil sounds now, compared to how Mick Jagger sounds now, or how Robert Smith sounds. Like those two still sound perfect, like they did decades ago. Whereas Axl and Vince Neil sound horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah.
Two very different styles of music, and
Yeah, I
how
was
they
gonna
treat
say,
their
yeah,
bodies and how they treat their voices.
Yeah, maybe. But then, like, I could see.
It's gonna be interesting to see how Korn sounds.
Like Corey Taylor or someone from like Slipknot who just like screams at the top of his voice. Like I could see him still doing this like in 20 years time. But no,
but he has a really good clean voice too.
Yeah, he's got a great voice.
I just watched or I just saw probably about a month ago the Foo Fighters. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Great band, one of my favorites. And Dave Grohl sang and screamed his ass off for 3 hours, and I'm like, how does he do that? How does he do that? I don't know. But they've got I don't know how many dates on their tour, 50 dates. I was like, how is he going to hold up?
Well,
it's different when you're 25 and now he's early 50s.
Yeah, Dave's one of the characters coming up in Power Fantasy.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's definitely like it's funny talking about like people in pop culture that are relevant around the time that the book is out. So it's kind of interesting to kind of have to revisit that stuff. There's some stuff in issue 2 where I was like, yeah, this kid's going to be wearing Jinko jeans.
Oh man!
If you had one superpower, what would it be?
I don't know. Like time manipulation, maybe, like to get more time, like so I could like get my pages done and do stuff I wanted to do in the afternoon and the evening without having to like my time management is like I think I'm pretty good at it, but it's like it's so
That's the number one response from all artists that we ask.
Yeah, it's like a bit more time, right? Yeah, I bet. Yeah. More time.
See, I would like time control just to be able to stop time and sleep.
Yeah, well, yeah, same thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to be able to like just pause it so I could just get the right amount of sleep and then get on with the day, or just like pause it for an hour. But yeah, definitely, because I still want the whole day. I'm the type of guy that gets up at like 6 anyway, because I like having the whole day to do stuff because I need the whole day anyway with kids as well and work. But like, I go to bed at 12, I fall asleep at about 12:30, and then I'm up again at 6. So I'm always operating on like 5.5 hours. So, and a lot of coffee. But I've been doing that for like the last decades. It's like
you need a nap.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm gonna give you one more question here. If you could change, so if you had you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing about the industry, about the way that you do your job, and everyone else that all of your coworkers in the industry, what would that one thing be that you would just forever fix for everyone?
I mean, there's loads of stuff like that. Can it be like a pet peeve? Like, because I know there's going to be like massive broad ones that I could do. But
anything.
I won't say it. I think it would probably be like understanding how creator-owned books are made is always something that's always been frustrating as an artist because, and I see it a lot anyway. Like when people like do our books or like someone talks about a book, as they'll talk about it as the writer's book, and then they'll say with the artist down below, like especially on a creator-owned book. So it's always that idea is like, oh yeah, I just read this book by this writer, and they're like, yeah, it's awesome. Like he's so good at doing this, that, and that, and like, oh yeah, and the artwork by such and such is cool as well. And it's just like, I just wish there was more of an understanding on how creator-owned books are made and like the conversations that are had before a book gets put together. And it's like, it's impossible. That's like an impossible task. You wouldn't be able to show people how. You'd have to literally show people the conversations you have going into the book to make it. And you know, that's not to say that every creator-owned book is made like that, but all of the ones that I've worked on and artists that I know that work on books are very co-authory with the people that they create books with. There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of collaboration going in and a lot of co-authorship as well, in terms of like not them writing, but just like an artist like bringing the story to life. It's not as simple as just like you get a script and you draw exactly what's written on the page, especially not in creator-owned books. Yeah. So like just that genuine, like just for more people to understand that would be like awesome. And again, that's a big ask. That wouldn't be anything that you'd be able to change. But if I could, if I could like inception that into everyone's brains, it was like talking about a book.
No, I mean that's a very fair point, and it always annoys me too, because you know comics is a very visual media, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, and we know people that they literally collect original art. Mm-hmm. Because they love it. This is the art, this is the characters, this is the story that they love. I don't know of anyone that collects original scripts.
Right, yeah. But then you get like lists of like all the writers that they follow.
But and you know, and this is not to dog on any writers, because we have a lot of writers that come on the show and we love them all, but you're right. It's like people don't associate that the art is actually part of the storytelling process. It's the main part, you know. So I mean, you make a very fair point.
I mean, it's like a 50, you know, like it's all right. It's like a beautiful collaboration of like two minds coming together, or three or four, whoever's working on the book. But in my case, like usually just like 2 or 3 people just shooting the shit really and trying to make the best thing that they can make, you know. So it's always kind of disappointing as a writer, you know, like, and it's got nothing to do with the writer. It's not their fault. There's nothing that they can do to change this. This is just a perception, like it has always been, you know. But like seeing the book that you spent, you know, because writers can work on like 2 or 3 projects at once, but when it's the project that you've just spent the last 2 years working on and you constantly see it being referred to as the writer's book all the time, you know, after a while, it kind of it can piss you off.
Because you know, when Amazon starts selling volume 1 of the Power Fantasy, it's going to say in the listing, book by Kieron Gillen.
Oh yeah, it's the same on Goodreads as well, 100%. Goodreads do it as well. They don't even give you a credit on Goodreads, so they treat you like you're just this entity that just like, they treat you like AI. You know, they treat you like a prompt, which is shit. You know, like you genuinely feel like a prompt at this point. You feel like the writer wrote a load of stuff, and then I sat there and generated it for them. You know, that's kind of how like not crediting artists properly makes you feel. It makes you feel like you're invaluable to the product, which is you know, which is still weird to think in a visual medium that's still the case. And I know that's not every case, you know, because like guys, you know, like there are like a lot of love for artists, like you say, but like if that was one thing I could change that everyone kind of knew, like, because I feel like this is a problem just kind of outside of comics. I don't think you see this a lot in comics, but like especially when you do a bigger book, you see this a lot when you see bigger media talking about your book. And I think that's the biggest gripe, is when you see like, you know, like bigger sites talking about the book that don't genuinely do stuff in comics. They would just straight up just say the writer's name, you know, or you know, even like when we announced this book, and I knew that going into this book, like Kieron is a big name. Kieron is the bigger name in this book. So I knew going into this, like I kind of had to be like, look, it's not going to be like me and him. It's going to be like Kieron's got a new book out, basically. And and I came to terms with that. Like I understand that. Like, and there's a lot riding on that weight as well. You know, like I know that this book, a lot of the success of this book is going to come off of Kieron being Kieron, basically, as well. So I can't, like, on one hand, I can't be angry at that, but then there's a little part of me that can be annoyed by the fact of it, that like you should also get a mention. You know, so hats off to all the, you know, the sites and stuff that put me in the headline as well. But yeah, that was a long answer to a very small question. Sorry.
No, nailed it. But that's a good one to do. That could fix a lot of problems for a lot of people. But we're gonna let you get back to life. We appreciate you giving us so much time to chat here.
Yeah, no worries.
Everyone, the Power Fantasy, August 7th. Yeah, like we said, basically 6 Dr. Manhattans trying to coexist with each other and with the world around them that is afraid of them.
Yep.
You are seriously missing out something special if you don't check this book out. It is, look at every review out there. It's a 10 out of 10 issue. Don't miss it. Thank you, Caspar. Anything you want to say to end off here?
No, thank you for having me on, and I'm really excited to know that everyone, that the book's going to be out there, and I really hope everyone gives it a shot and checks it out and sees all the hard work that we put into creating it. Because this genuinely feels like a book. This is a book for people that love comics, because we love comics. We made a book that we felt like is like the what's the word? Sorry. It's like
it's good.
Insert word here.
Yeah. It's just like the combination of everything that we love, basically. It's yeah.
And yeah, you miss it at your own peril. This is not one to sleep on. Go check it out. We demand it. But thank you, Caspar Wijngaard. This was Bat Force Radio. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.